Well, hello to everyone. Welcome to another Fireside Adoptees interview as part of the Adoptee Fire Series. We're really excited to have you here. And our guest today is someone who will be familiar to a number of you, and her name is Michelle. And she is the founder of Baby Be Brave, which is, of course, a well-known organization in the adoptee community. And we'll have her speak about that in just a few minutes. Michelle herself is an international adoptee born in Romania. She spent the first 2 years of her life in an orphanage before being adopted into the US. And she has a lot of course, complexity and grief in her story, but also an expression of great determination and passion for impacting the lives of other adoptees, and partly through her organization and through the wonderful interviews that she also leads on her Instagram channel. And we're really excited to have her here. She has a wonderful heart for adopted people. And so at this point, I'd like to welcome Michelle. And certainly we're very happy and honored to have you here today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Thank you everyone for taking time out of your day today and just listening to my journey. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Great. Very, very happy and very honored to have the opportunity to speak to you. And of course, we know each other a little bit, and I've had the pleasure of being interviewed by you, which was a wonderful experience. And you're a very gracious host and well thought of, and certainly I appreciate that. And I'd like to start in by just asking you some of these things about, since you're an international adoptee, of course, I imagine it's very difficult to necessarily learn things about maybe the circumstances of your own relinquishment, but without giving away too much in advance about your search, do you happen to know anything about the circumstances that led to your relinquishment?
I do. I mean, obviously Romania was a very, very poor country at the time. My biological mom, which I'm going to be referring to her as Mama throughout the whole interview, so you'll know who I'm referring to. But yeah, my mama was very poor. She was not married. It was right at during communism in Romania, so it was a hard time. And she was actually kicked out of her home by her mother and father because she got pregnant with me. So just due to all of those circumstances played a huge role in me being placed in an orphanage.
I imagine that growing up and finding out you were adopted, there must have been so many questions, but for all of us that happens. What age were you when you did find out?
I found out when I was 8 years old. So I didn't grow up knowing, and I wasn't old enough, I guess, till I can fully comprehend it all. So I guess I was in that very awkward, in like lower age of just, just having a lot of questions, being very confused. I guess replying in a way where it sounds horrible now, but I think my exact words were, "You mean my mom's not my real mom?" And referring to my adoptive mom. And obviously we don't like that term real with an adoption, but as a child, 8 years old, that was just the first thing that came to me. I didn't know better. But yeah, it was really hard to find out from that age.
I imagine so. You probably remember the conversation pretty well. I certainly do for me.
Don't actually.
Oh, you don't?
I remember it was down the shore. My adoptive father told me it was just him and I. We were in a car. He drove me to the bay where near the Jersey Shore, and that's when he told me. My adoptive mom was not there during that conversation. I don't really remember much else after that, but I just remember him telling me my response to it. And I don't know if it's a trauma response, but I think I just went completely, I shut out the rest of the conversation. And to that point on, I don't really remember much about it.
Oh, interesting. So how about once you did maybe start to process it, what was childhood like knowing you were adopted? How was that for you?
It was hard. I think when I was that young, I didn't really know how to pinpoint why I was feeling this, like why I was feeling it. I didn't know how to feel all the emotions at the time. I didn't know to even ask for help. I didn't know how to ask for help. So I kind of just felt very alone. And I know I wasn't alone. I have a huge family, but I just felt alone inside, that nobody else understood. I couldn't even understand the whole situation. But I think a lot of us as adoptees feel just like we don't belong. We feel like we're different. And then when you find out you're adopted, at least for me, it kind of put the pieces together, like, okay, that's why maybe I feel a little out of place and I don't feel like I belong, is because of that. And, no one made me feel that way. It
I
was
have to say
just,
the same thing. Yeah, that no
yeah,
one was
just
making
the
me
way
feel
I
that way
felt it,
either. But it does come from inside us, and we're
for
very much
sure.
aware of it. Were there any siblings? Did you have any in that you grew up with?
Yeah, so I have an older brother. He's 6 years older. He is my adopted parents' biological child. Um, that we had an amazing relationship. We still do. He never treated me as his adopted sister, and he still doesn't. And that's what I love about him. He's just always been real from day one with me. And like I said, he never made me feel like I didn't belong in a family.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. That was also my experience with two older sisters who were natural to my parents. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate that so many people don't get to have that experience of acceptance. So I feel appreciative of that, and I'm glad that that was your experience as well.
Same, yeah.
How about in your childhood about other adoptees? Did you know of any, or did you ever have conversations with anyone about it?
There was one other girl who was adopted from Romania. She was from a different school, grade school than I was. Somehow, I guess our families knew each other from the neighborhood, so they wanted us to meet because we were both adopted from Romania. I don't know what their goal was. Maybe it was just they wanted me to know somebody else adopted from Romania. We didn't really talk much about it. I think she asked me a couple questions about our birth mothers, and then that's it. And then we just kind of grew apart. We didn't really stay connected. And I didn't have anybody else around me that was adopted. So
Yeah, I would say something similar as well to that.
yeah.
But at some point well, let me ask you this. What was the conversation that you may have had with your parents after you found out? Did you feel free to talk with them at all at any point about what had gone on or what you were processing?
They never dismissed it. I can't say that. It was just never, I feel like a lot of parents, and no blame on my parents. I think it's just they didn't know. But a lot of parents just assumed that they did their job of telling me, and
Mhm.
then that was it. Like that their job was done. And if anything, like their job kind of just begun, because unraveling all of that, I needed support even more. I didn't grow up in a very emotional household where we sat around and talked about our feelings and everything. So like I said, it was never like, if I talked to them, it would never be a complete dismissal. It was just, I don't think they would be able to fully understand me the way I would need them to.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering at some point, obviously or maybe all along, even since you asked, so she's not my real mother. And I know that that was the words of somebody young, but you must have
Yeah.
started to wonder a lot, or wondered the whole time, and decided eventually you were going to do a search,
Yes.
which is obviously an enormously personal thing in the life of any adoptee. But
Mhm.
I'm interested in something that you had recorded in another place, which is that you said you had feelings about whether it was right or whether you would go ahead with a search based on whether it might hurt your adoptive parents' feelings. And I was
Mhm.
wondering, I think that's very common, but do you feel like you might still be in that position today, that maybe you would say, maybe I won't search if I thought it might damage my relationships in some way?
You know, for me, I think I still carry unnecessary guilt for any time I talk about my biological family or my country. I feel like almost in a way guilty for bringing that up, because maybe it shows that I'm not, grateful, or I'm not appreciative, or I
Right.
don't love them, or I don't want to be here with them. And that's obviously not the case. It's two different loves for two different sides. But yeah, in high school, I went up to my adoptive mom and I told her, I said, I really want to go searching for my biological mom. But if it's something that's going to hurt you, I won't go through with it. And I meant it. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously deep down, I was hoping she would say, no, go ahead. But I truly meant it, because she is the only mom that I knew. She is the mom that raised me. So obviously I have a deep love for her, and I would not want her to feel like she wasn't good enough for me. But thankfully she was supportive and she said yes, to go ahead because it was my right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still carry that guilt around even to this day with things. I still go through with it. Obviously, at 34 years old, I'm an adult, I can go through with it. But I still carry the emotional guilt of like hurting their feelings or feeling like they're being replaced.
Yeah. And I found I had to reassure my family
Mhm.
once the connection had been made to my biological mother, that I had to reassure them they were important to me. It's
For sure.
unfortunate that we have a burden like that, I think, right? It
It's hard.
restricts you, it
It's
constricts
very
you.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on the age you actually conduct a search, it can put a lot of strain, I think, emotionally on somebody who's shouldn't have to carry that.
Absolutely.
So when you did decide to search, obviously you were up against something formidable because you're an international adoptee. You're from somewhere else. And
Mhm.
how did you even know how to attack that, or where to find resources to go about that?
So obviously we all know we have to be 18 to legally search, but I started about a year ahead of time. I contacted the lawyer who handled my adoption. So my parents had his information. So I reached out to him. And mind you, I did not have any photos of any of my biological family growing up. So I had no idea what my mama looked like at all. So when the lawyer replied back and said, yes, I have your files, I have a photo of her, I was so excited because I could finally now see what she looks like instead of imagining it.
Yeah.
So I brought a friend over to his place. We went through all of his files and my files were not there. I don't know what happened. There was a lot of probably reasons behind that I
Mhm.
probably shouldn't talk about, but I it was just not there and I left devastated, but I didn't give up. I hired a private investigator in America, and I don't recommend that if you're an international adoptee. Don't go searching with an American investigator. It just won't happen.
Mm.
It took me 5 years and I finally found a private investigator in Romania who found my family within 3 weeks.
So it took
Yeah.
5 years to find the investigator, or did you work with someone else up to that
I
point?
worked with an investigator in America, but he just kept coming to dead ends, and we were just getting nowhere.
Mm.
And then I got in contact with the PI in Romania, and he found my family fast.
You must have had a hard time maintaining any kind of hope during that time. That's a long time to wait.
I was, you say a lot. It's like we start losing hope, and I really was losing hope, and I just it was kind of like if you want to picture it like a movie scene where like you're holding your phone, you're bringing it everywhere. You don't want to go away from it in case you get a call because it's different time, periods and all. And I think I remember just putting my phone down. I was like, you know what? This is literally never going to happen. I'm done. And I ended up getting a call, and it was the PI in Romania, and he said, Michelle, I found your family.
Wow.
I think I didn't speak for like 30 seconds. He's like, are you still there? I'm like, yeah, I'm here. But it was almost like and I didn't believe it at first. And that's a funny little story I'll share is I guess I was so convinced that it would never happen and it's too good to be true that I ended up having the PI in Romania investigated by my PI in America, because I'm thinking in my head
Oh,
that, okay, he found the family, international family, he paid them to be my family, and I'm scammed.
oh,
This is
scam.
all fraud. And that's what goes through my head. And I think it was just, like I said, it was too good to be true. Um, Thankfully, he was legit. Everything was fine. I also look exactly like my mama, so there's really um, no reason for me to not believe. But yeah,
And so, can you talk a little bit about the feeling of cultural distance or separation from knowing if you'd been in Romania, you would have been a completely different person in a different culture with a different language, and what that's like for you now, and finally finding your family and wondering how am I even going to communicate with them, or had you studied the language along the way, or prepared in any way for that interaction?
when I first went searching in high school, I got all these books. I was teaching myself Romanian. So, because I was determined that when I do find my mama, I could actually talk to her in Romanian and she'd be so proud of me. It wasn't really a happy ever after, reunion. It was more of her dismissing me. And of course, again, I was devastated. So I ended up like burying all the books and just forgetting. I erased Romania out of my life completely for years. But over the past few years, maybe like 3 years, I've been really learning Romanian. I allowed my country for me back into my life. I am not fluent, but I can at least say a lot of phrases. I do talk to my brother and sister, my half brother, half sister in Romania through Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
My brother and I talk almost every day, but that's because of Google Translate. I wouldn't be able to hold a conversation with them.
And I can't help but notice what you said about the not happily ever after nature of what happened. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd like to talk a little bit about how the contact went or how the interactions went and what that was
Yeah.
like for you, if you feel free to do that.
Sure. So I wrote my mama a letter. So when the PI went to see her, she could read it. I wasn't getting any response from her letter. I sent a Christmas card to her, then I sent a birthday card to her, and I just wasn't getting any reply, nothing at all. And I guess that was me saying, okay, like, I guess accept that. Stop pushing, accept that she doesn't want to talk to me. And of course, at the beginning, in a way, I was selfish because I was like, I put it all on me. Why me? Like, all I wanted my whole life was to talk to her and her be in my life. And how could she do this to me? I played, I guess, in a way, the victim role on my end, not really realizing how hard it is for her as well in different ways. But during that whole finding her, I also discovered some really hard parts of my past as well. I am the product of rape. And so that is why I think part of the reason why I was relinquished is just because it was hard for her as well. She reported, she went to the police, she made press charges, he threatened her. So she ended up dropping charges against him. So it's a really hard, sad truth to live with every day, realizing that is how your life began.
Sure.
But yeah.
I'm sure it must be.
But there was a lot of pluses on the other end. Is my maternal grandfather wrote me a letter all in Romanian, and he became my pen pal for about a year or so. And him and I wrote letters back and forth to each other. And he was the one person that wanted to talk to me until the letters stopped, unfortunately. And then I reached out to my brother. I looked for him and asked what happened to find out he passed away.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
like I said, there's a lot of sad parts of my journey, but I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to have that connection with him. So I won't give that part up at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does yield some enduring connections for many of us. And fortunately for some, there aren't any, and that's really tragic too. But I'm glad that something came out of that for you to have for that period of time.
Absolutely.
And I know that, Michelle, that I've heard some of the recent interviews, and there's a sense adoptees have, and I mentioned this as a form of complexity, which is that we're gathering information about ourselves, which is a strange thing to think of in the first place. We're trying to build the story of us, which a lot of people step into life having that story kind of already in motion, and we have to rebuild what we didn't have access to. We find out things and we assimilate them, and we think we're on a path to understanding more about ourselves, and then something comes up that totally doesn't fit or disrupts the image we were building of what we thought our past was. And I feel like maybe something like that has come up for you, maybe since your last interview, that new discoveries or anything that maybe you feel like, I understand what's going on right now. And then suddenly something else comes up and have to reevaluate the whole thing and rebuild it. Has that been your experience in recent months?
Yeah, I'm going to be very honest. The past few months have been a really hard time for me. I want to before I say this part, I want to circle back a little bit because it's kind of how this conversation is going to lead. I am in reunion with my mama for about a year. The reason for that is, you remember me saying that I wrote a letter years ago and never heard back. I ended up finding, about 11 years later, I ended up finding a letter that she wrote to me in response to my original letter that I never saw.
Oh,
And the really hard part of it all is I've had that in my possession for years. It was attached to paperwork that I swore I looked over and over again, that I was very hard on myself and felt, how stupid could I be that I had this letter in my possession all these years and I missed out on the opportunity. I was blaming her. All the emotions I was feeling towards her, I kind of created in a way on my own because I didn't realize I had this letter. So when I found the letter in 2021, I reached out to my brother and wanted to make sure, she was still alive and she, wanted to talk to me. And I guess she was willing to talk, and she was, I think just years ago, she wasn't ready and it was hard for her. And I understand that more now, of course. So her and I, yes, have been in reunion for about over a year. We've been writing back and forth in Romanian to each other. However, in August this last year, which is my birthday month, I decided to finally reach out to my biological father and confront him and let him know that I exist, if he didn't already know.
yeah.
And that's something I needed to do for myself, something I needed to feel at peace with. And I wanted nothing from him. I just wanted him to know how much pain he caused me over the years. Just thinking, like letting him know that I started questioning myself as a person, that I used to think I'm half of his DNA. What does that make me as a person?
Yeah.
So when the same PI went to visit him, I wrote him a letter, very, very like a short letter. He basically lied, which I didn't realize at first, and he made my mama out to be the bad person and came out with this story of how they were together for a year and he had to end things with her because she was cheating on him and all of these things. And I could say this because I'm healing from it, but very stupidly, I believed him. I took his side. I went against her. And I was very, very, it was hard for me these past few months because I went against everything I believed in for women, for myself as a survivor of sexual assault, that of course, the person who does that is going to lie. They're going to make up story. They're not going to take accountability. And I went against my mama, who was so open with me. And I think the hard part was I just wanted it to be true. I wanted so bad to be true that he didn't do that, because I don't want to think of myself as that anymore. But ever since then, I'm healing from him. I'm learning to really let him go from my life, and I can't hold on to him anymore. But I'm trying to mend that relationship with my mama, and I think we're okay. But I think that stirred up some, she started to get a little more reserved on her end, and I don't blame her for it. So I wrote to her and reassured her that I believe you. I'm sorry that I believed him, and just I was taking it very personal to me that I started feeling guilty again, that I don't deserve a relationship with her now. I don't deserve this because I went against her. So that is why I've been really struggling the past few months of just really hating myself for that.
Well, that's very vulnerable, Michelle, to have shared that. I appreciate that. We support that you've been bold enough to say that. Certainly no place any of us would want to find ourselves. So how does that feel to share that in an interview since the last time you interviewed? You doing okay?
I mean, I feel it's emotional, but this is the first time I'm sharing that in public with everybody. I did share it in a support group, a small private support group I had. But it's the first time publicly that I'm really sharing my guilt and how I'm feeling. And I started really disconnecting from Romania and from my family and from my brother. And I started feeling guilty for that. I'm like, he doesn't deserve that. You know, it has nothing to do with him and my sister. And so yeah, I tend to put a lot of blame on myself for knowing better or for not knowing better. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to finally say that out loud, but it's good because it's part of the journey. Sad, as sad as it is, it's part of the journey. It's what happens.
It is very, very brave to have said. So thank you for
Thank you.
sharing that in a space like this. Do you find that having been a survivor yourself, it gives you more compassion for your birth mother?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I first found out years ago that's what happened to her, of course I felt terrible for her, but I had nothing to really relate to with her. So it was more of like, I felt so sorry for her. But then again, I went back into that selfish mode of, but why doesn't she want to talk to me? I just completely disregard. But about a year before is when I was sexually assaulted, before I found out about my birth father. So I started over the years really understanding it more, and even more now, of like her her talking about her opening up to me. I thank her. I let her share what she wants because I know what it's like to be in that position. I thankfully was able to get away from that guy. She was not. But I still have the same understanding of what it's like to be powerless and fight for your life. So I am very much able to give her empathy. So I go very easy on her now and try to put myself in her shoes of if this were me. And sometimes what helps me most is I have to take away the fact that she's my mama. She's a woman. She's a person. So I have to give her empathy and compassion for that as well. And I can't be selfish anymore. You know, I have a right to know. I have every right to know and talk to her about these things, but I have to also understand that it's not easy for her at all.
It may be personal, but does she know that that happened to you as well?
She did, and that's why I opened up. I actually just told her. We had a video call last September, I think. And because she opened up more with me, I decided to open up with her. And it was more of one, just finding that comfort within each other, her knowing that I've had similar experience, and also in hopes that if I become more vulnerable with her, she can feel more safe with me.
Yeah.
She can feel more open to want to talk to me, and maybe that can bond us more in some way. But like I said, I'm not going to push her. You know, I am in my journey, my healing journey. I don't know if she ever entered hers or if she healed a different way. So I'm not going to re-traumatize her over and over again. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So certainly the pieces of reunion and all of the complexity around your own experience of being a survivor of this and wanting to believe your biological father and going down these paths, having to reorient yourself all along the way. That's really hard on a person, right? To figure out where you are in all this. And so certainly it's understandable that you felt disconnected from a lot of things for a while too.
Yeah.
But of course would hope that you ended up being able to give yourself a lot of grace, because obviously these are things that happen to you. And
Exactly.
yeah. And
yeah, and that's what I think that's what helped me most. The fact that I entered a healing journey, the fact that I healed a lot of old wounds prior to all of this. Not that it hurt any less, but I'm able to give myself that grace, be patient with myself, not be too hard on myself. I did notice that I reacted in a better way than I would have if this would have happened years ago. I think if it would happen years ago, I don't know if I'd be able to handle it at all. But the fact that I've worked so hard on myself to do that inner work, to let things go, um, helped me maybe bounce back faster. Or before, I used to really personally attack myself of like everything about my character and my love for myself. Like I had no self-love for me, no confidence at all. But I do more now because of that healing. And that's why in those moments, I didn't really go against myself, and I didn't pinpoint like, why am I this way or why am I like that way? I really thought about the actual situation itself. So that's one definite plus from my healing that I was able to use in this situation.
Wonderful. And this brings me to wanting to talk about Baby Be Brave.
Yeah.
How did the idea come up? Where did the name come from, and how did you get started?
So, so this was during the pandemic, actually. Earlier that year in March, I was going to originally go search for my birth father. I had the money ready to go. I had everything ready. And then I chickened out because I was scared. From that moment, I think just the whole, I went through into a very deep depression just from just being, you know, what I went through years ago, being assaulted with my whole birth, like the rejection, what my birth father did, and just during the pandemic of just being isolated from family and people I love. It was really hard. I mean, I started really self-isolating.
Yeah.
July of that year, I almost gave up on myself that night. And then I decided, I was laying there and I was just like, you know what? I really can't be the only person that feels so bad, that goes through this. You know, nobody goes through the exact same thing, but I was like, no, there has to be people out there that need support, that need help like I do. So I decided to start an Instagram page, and I really wanted something with brave in it. I just love the meaning behind brave, and it's not just that cliche word that people use all the time. There's so many deep meanings behind bravery. And I just kept going, like saying all these words around brave, and I'm just like, baby be, and I was like, baby be brave. And I was like, okay, I kind of went with it. And then it started to be, it didn't really originally start with as an adoption platform. It was more of just a page for like support, friendship. And then until that November for National Adoption Awareness Month, I started the IGT Live series just for that month, sharing adoptee stories because I was meeting people in the adoption community. And that's when I decided to continue. Brave Souls is the IG Live series name.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just kept going strong with it, interviewing mostly adoptees, some adoptive parents, some birth parents. And yeah, I'm 5 seasons in now, and I love it. I love that the community has healed me. It's healing me, just finding people who went through similar situations, who still go through it. And it was just very comforting to know that people out there exist. So that's when it became an adoption platform.
Amazing. And it's certainly visible, and I mean that in the finest sense of people are very aware that you're out there doing this, and you provide very empathetic interviews, your style and interaction, and you go even a degree beyond what we're doing here. I mean, we're interviewing live in the presence of adoptees, but you actually have taken it out live to people publicly that anybody can join and watch. So your ability to be a gracious host and to make people feel comfortable, I will say that it's really wonderful to be in the presence of that, and the support and the strength that it comes from just to interact with you in that way. I can attest to just how great an experience that is, and how I feel like it's been very beneficial for me to have been on there, and for other friends that I know of who have been on there. And so I want to commend you for the great work you're doing just in the interview capacity, but you're also doing other things with Baby Be Brave. Could you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Well, thank you for all of that. That's so kind of you. Yeah, so Brave Souls was supposed to be a podcast, was originally. and I was going to get all the equipment for it. And then when I was doing the lives, I just fell in love with the lives because it's live, everyone's able to jump on, be a part of the conversation. They can type it in, ask questions. And what I love most is that it just brought everyone together, and felt like they were a part of the conversation. And that's why I kept it a live series. Maybe one day I'll transfer it over to a podcast, but I still like the lives. It's more personal, and I just that's what I love about it. But I do host adoptee events. I do 2 a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. If you were adoptee in the Philadelphia, New Jersey area, please go see my page. And I'm having one in May. It's just a place for adoptees to come connect in person. Online, we create such a beautiful bond, but in person, it doesn't do justice. I've met people, a couple people even on here in person, you, Jim, Lauren, I think I saw on here, but there's just amazing people, and you just become like best friends, and you just become family. And it's really beautiful, the connections you make through this community, and just doing what we do on here, just having these speaker series. But yeah, I do those a couple times a year. I do host an adoptee support group bi-weekly on Wednesday nights. And it's like I said, everything I do is a safe space. I will go above and beyond to make sure that every person around me is comfortable, feels safe. I always make sure that if somebody doesn't feel safe by someone else, they tell me right away, and I will fix it. Like, I don't tolerate that. I want everyone to just connect and be friends, and just support each other. But yeah, that's what I do for now. But Baby Brave is growing. I have a lot of beautiful ideas for the future once I'm able to do these amazing things one day. My main goal is to just connect more with the whole triad and bring adoptees, birth parents, and adopted parents all together to listen to each other and not have us versus this person or put blame on anyone. We all take accountability for part of our adoption in some way. So come together, learn from each other, listen to each other, educate each other. That's my main goal. Because I know no one will ever take away the trauma of adoption, but if we can provide these tools and resources from early on, it could eliminate a lot of it, at least for the adoptee.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That actually leads into one of the final things I'd like to ask you,
Sure.
which is, what does healing mean for you in terms of adoption?
One is, they say, what is the first step is admitting it. Sometimes I have to say it out loud, like, I'm adopted. Like, even though I know I am, I have to say it. And I know a lot of my adoption plays a huge role in a lot of aspects of my life, relationships, friendships in my life, even relationships with myself. But I think the true meaning of healing is, one, finding a community like we have right now, and on here, outside of here, finding people who get you, who support you, who give you that safe space, that platform to share your story, share your journey. Because your story is your story, but your journey is forever, because there's so many different parts of your journey that you have to take steps in. And sometimes it doesn't get easier, but the more you heal, the more time you take to really take those steps of going through the journey of healing, you will be able to manage it better. I've had to do EMDR, which has helped big time for me, letting me go from the orphanage and all of that. I did to healing retreats. I've been to like therapy. I do a lot of, I try to do like yoga with like other adoptees for certain like events. Anything, there is no right or wrong way to heal. Just take time for yourself. Sometimes being disconnected isn't a bad thing. So me disconnecting for a few months might have been for a sad reason, but I needed that time to really take care of myself, to be, I can go on and on about healing. There isn't like one short version or
Sure, sure.
answer to it, but just being kind to yourself, asking for help. You know, everyone's journey is different, but it doesn't, like I said, there's no manual, there's no handbook how to deal with it. But having that support from each other, that's been my healing from the community. They helped me big time.
I experienced
Just
that.
being validated by each other, and having other people who've been through the journey. Like if you're even reunion, I can now go to friends and ask them, well, this is happening. What did you do? Or can you give me advice? Even if it may not help me personally, just knowing that I can go to somebody and just listen to them, and maybe that would help me. Yeah, just I think that's my biggest thing, is find a community and get help.
Yeah, there's like a resonance. People
Mhm.
vibrate on the same energy level of they feel this and they understand it and they relate to it empathetically, and can provide that support that nobody on outside of our circumstances can give us. So I completely agree with you on everything you said, and what wonderful
Yes.
words.
Thank you. Well, you know what it is? It's
Yeah,
not about support, it's about the right support. So I have
true
plenty of
enough.
support
Yes.
in my family and like around me, but it's not the support that I truly need to be okay. So there's a different, so the right support are the people, you know, finding your tribe, finding that community. That's the right support.
That's a really helpful distinction, and I'm glad you made it. It gives me something to sharpen my own thinking about hearing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. There you can get all kinds of support, and whether or not it's what you need right then is a totally different thing. So yeah,
Right.
thank you for that. How can people find you, Michelle?
I am only right now on Instagram. So at Baby Be Brave LLC, you'll see the lotus. That is my symbol, the lotus with the triad symbol in it. That's my that's the photo to look out for. I'm also on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. If you want to go subscribe, I have my first 2 seasons fully uploaded on there. I'm working to upload the last 2, and then slowly do put the 5th one on as I go. But mainly my line of communication would be on Instagram. You could also email me at team@babybebrave.com if you want to do more personal conversation. But yeah, that's mainly Instagram is where I'm more active.
And any final things you might have to say, or
Oh, I'm sorry.
anything?
Also the
Yeah.
website.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Just very simple, www.babybebrave.com, and you can see a little bit about my bio. You can see photos from the events I've hosted with other adoptees. And yes, that's where you can see. And then my link to my YouTube is on there as well, and Instagram.
Great. And again, the interviews are wonderful. They're spontaneous. It's fun to be able to see the things that people are talking about. And by fun, of course, I don't mean like enjoyable sort of. There's a
Comforting.
collegiality
It's
to it, but it's
comforting.
comforting. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's validating as well.
Yeah.
Oh, anything final, Michelle, before we go?
No, I think I will just leave with a piece of advice is, well, there was one question I think that you were going to ask me about, if they wanted to know more about me. And I think that's where I want to go to the advice is, we are not perfect. Again, there's no right way to heal or deal with situations that come up. No matter how much I act like I'm put together, I sometimes fall apart. Sometimes my journey wins and I don't, and I lose. But it's just, like I said, it's just a part of the journey. Just be kind to yourself. Give yourself grace through it. Take time when you need to. Take time to process. There is no time period on grief or any of that, because we constantly live with grief. As an adoptee, we're always living with grief.
Yes.
It's always a continued loss, even throughout. You know, I'm losing my birth father, but I never had him. So, but I had the idea of him with me. So, and then there's always that fear of one day my mama not wanting to talk to me, or it's too much for her and she can disconnect. So I always hold that fear of like, I can't control that. And I have to understand if that happens for her. But yeah.
Well, what a great conversation, and very, very brave. And I will say that in the best
Thank
sense
you.
of the meanings of the word for me. Been really vulnerable with this, and we appreciate that. And certainly it's been a great experience here for us as well. So with that, we're about to conclude the recorded section of the interview. But I'd like to thank everybody who's been in attendance here, and also to remind everyone that our interviews do go up on the Fireside Adoptees YouTube channel, which we'd invite you to check out. You'll see Michelle's here in a couple days, and a lot of other people that we can learn more about their stories as well. So thanks again to everyone, and this will
Thank you,
conclude this.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.